Would I recommend becoming a nurse? I don't know that this week is the best week to ask me that question. I don't think that right now in this country, in this current political, social, economic climate, is the best time to be a nurse.
Terror of cops gone bad. But if policy is correct, what are the government responsible? SMCBS has acquired extensive documentary footage showing federal agents in reasonably priced black suits in Rockwell, south of Odessa, even Capital City.
Like, it doesn't always want to change through my weapons, and I'm not sure
people have disappeared, their
why.
families kept in the dark, and still the U.S. government remains silent, refuses to acknowledge these abductions ever took place.
Yeah, but some games are so worth revisiting, you know? I mean, I love nursing. I love nursing so much. But at the same time, right now, it is a very difficult field. And it's not because of, like, our actual job. It's because of all the shit that goes with it that isn't really because of our job. Like, so, okay. So travel nursing makes good money, sort of. That's complicated. So, because I do travel nursing, and the thing is that yeah, you make good money while you're on contract. But here's the thing: you don't get any paid time off, you don't get any vacation, and you don't get any sick time. If you call out ever, you lose chunks of your contract. So it's really easy for you to get sick once and literally lose $1,000 of your week's pay. So it's very misleading in that context, first of all. Second of all, it's also misleading because you're only making that good money while you're on contract, and oftentimes there's really extended periods of time that you're off contract when you are incurring debt or living off of money that you had to budget while you were on contract. So if you have to be off contract for 2 months, that's 2 months without income, and you have to just deal with that. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's really, really misleading. And so, yeah, $6K on a 13-week contract sounds like it's sweet as shit money. But if you lose $1,000 of that money because you called out sick one day, that's a lot of fucking money. And then on top of that, you are now off work for 2 months after that 13-week contract. You now are really working, or you're really spreading that 6K over 5 months rather than 3 months. So that money isn't really as good as it sounds anymore, you know? And so it's really, really misleading. And then on top of that, you're paying for 2 housing. Like, you have to maintain a place that you live as your home base. And then on top of that, wherever you go, like I live in Maine, but I'm working in New York. So I maintain 2 apartments. So my home base apartment is like $900 a month. And then my apartment that I'm living at in New York where I work is like, I don't know, $1,000 and something. So you're paying for 2 places and living at one. So you also have like chunks of change that are increasing your cost of living, increasing your expenses that comes out of that 6K. So 6K sounds like a lot, but in the end, you really aren't making 6K. Like, does that make sense? Because it's just not. As a regular nurse making $90,000 a year, well, you know, it's a lot of it comes down to like, what does your debt look like? You know? So, like, whether or not you're being well paid is very relative. Like, I left nursing school with $50,000 or so of debt. You know, if you can leave nursing school with, like, half that, you can afford less money, and it's good money. Like, good money is relative. Like, what's your buying power? So, it's complicated. And do you have children? Like, good money is different if you have 5 children versus if you have 2 children. But theoretically, a nurse should be able to graduate with her shit ton of debt and get a starting job and have a family and be able to fucking pay off that debt and support that family. And we can't. We can't. 20 years later, I still have college debt. It's fucking bullshit. Blah. Yeah, like, right now, everybody's fucking underpaid and underrespected. This country is built on treating employees like bullshit, and I'm so tired of the goddamn Kool-Aid of, well, it's not in the budget. Well, it's not in the budget because the hospital CEO is making billions of dollars of profit. Like, the average hospital is bringing in, you know, the average CEO of a hospital is making, for their own personal income, over $1 billion a year for their own income. So, like, what the fuck is that? Like, really? Does a nurse's salary get increased each year? No, you are not guaranteed a raise every year. It is considered merit-based. I have never worked at any hospital that you just get a cost of living raise. Have I considered being a nurse in a different country? Yes, and that's complicated. And a lot of the problems that we're having in America we are also having those problems in other parts of the country. The problems with patient ratio, that's worldwide. That's not just an American problem. So that problem wouldn't go away. The problems of the stress that's coming with the pandemic, that's not just an American problem. So a lot of stuff that we're seeing that are problems in America are not exclusively American problems. However, there are many of them that are worse in America or are, like, you know, the insurance issues are definitely exclusively American. Yeah, not in the budget. Meanwhile, every corporation is making record profits. Yeah, like, really. Like, the travel nursing agencies and the hospitals fucking broke profit records during the pandemic while they told us that we couldn't get risk pay, while nurses were legit dying doing their job. Fucking bullshit. But, you know, hey. Are stationary nurses jealous of that? Some of them, absolutely. Should travel nurses get paid more? Absolutely, because you are being asked to go to a facility and work there cold. When I go to a travel facility, I am being paid with the expectation that I have the level of expertise that allows me to walk into a facility, know fucking nothing about that facility, and give fucking excellent care. And I do. That says a lot about the kind of nurse that I am. And it's because I've done it for 20 years. A nurse that does not have a lot of experience, that does not have a good skill set base, can't provide that level of care. You need orientation to know how to do your job. You need that support to be able to do your job well. And when you are doing a travel nurse position, you don't get orientation. You get dumped in after like one day of paperwork and one day of here's the tour, go, boom. And you're just expected to hit that floor running. And you're expected to fucking do it well. So yeah, you're being paid expert level wages because you're expected to be an expert. And thank you, Fishy. We really appreciate the support. Do I think that Dubois is a good place to work at? I don't specifically know. People say that you should stay at a facility for 2 years and then to start travel. My personal advice is if you're going to look to be a travel nurse is to get 2 years of experience in your field of expertise and consider getting certified in that area. But at least 2 years. I personally wouldn't say 2 years is ideal. I would say 5 years is ideal. Because you're still competing for those jobs. There's still nurses that are applying for those jobs. You're going to be applying with nurses who have experience and certificates, etc. So you're still comparing your resume to other nurses. So you're still going through the resume process. You're still going through the application process. You're still going through the interview. No, I went to New York in Maine. I went to the University of Maine at Orono. I went to a 4-year BSN program. As an outsider, I work with contract on a lab here in Chile. I make around $2K a month, but the plus is I have bonuses for transports and stuff. So let's round it to 2.5. I love my job, but I've also worked with traveling nurses that have the exact same issue that you mentioned. One day they call out sick, the next day they're gone. Yeah, there's no forgiveness. Like, I have chronic illness, and I really have to debate whether or not, like, I literally have 0 sick days. My contract gives me no paid sick time. I get no sick days. I get no vacation time. I get none of that. Like, that's not a thing. You are expected to work every day, period. So I can literally get in a car accident on the way to work, and it's not considered an excusable absence. Like, I still am punished financially for that absence. It's absolutely insanity. Yeah. And that's not true for all nurses. Like, many nurses do travel with their family, and many don't. But being away from your home, whether you travel with your family or not, is definitely a sacrifice because you're not in an area of support. Like, if you're moving every 3 to 6 months, you're not in an area where you have friends, where you have a social support network. You're going to be constantly going from one place to the next. So you don't build that social support. You're going to go into a facility where you don't know the people that you're working with, and you don't have all of that there that you would have if you worked in a facility. So yeah, it is asking people a lot, and I think that the pay is proportional, but it's misleading. Like, at the end of the day, we're not paying off more debt working as travel, Miss Roch and I, we're not getting more debt paid with me working as a travel nurse than we were getting paid when I was working just as a stay-in-one-spot nurse. And it's because of the inconsistency of the contract, because of the penalties for calling out, and me being a chronic illness person having to have days that I call out. Like, that's non-negotiable. I don't have that option. This is too much. What the hell? They should be treated better. Yeah, nurses should be treated better. And, like, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, nurses in the United States are the most frequently assaulted profession in this country. Nurses are assaulted more often than police officers, more often than people who work in jail, more often than any other profession. I am more likely to get punched in the face at work than a police officer. Like, what the fuck? And they wonder why people don't want to work in this job. Like, I am more likely to become physically injured at work than jobs that are getting hazard pay. That's insane. So, yeah, it's a fucked up profession right now. There's a lot of stress right now. The emotional price is absolutely fucking huge. So, yeah. And I am, like, totally behind on my redeems because I'm ranting. Sorry. I'm gonna water the face hole. Thank you, guys. And I'm gonna water the face hole a second time. And I don't think that any of the information out there is necessarily wrong. I just think that it's piecemeal and misrepresenting. Like, people don't realize, like, how fragile the American healthcare system is right now because they're only being told about what's going on in a very piecemeal fashion. So they're not getting the big picture view of it. And we're going to be doing a posture check. Thank you. So, yeah, it's really hard when you don't work in the profession and you're only being told about little bits of it to know what's really going on. And then on top of that, a lot of this medical shit, especially during the pandemic times and since, has become very politicized and has become very entrenched in not only politics, but this weird social battle. So we're arguing about what's actually fact and what's actually science rather than focusing on what we're going to be doing about shit. And that is an enormous problem when we're looking at trying to make things change. I think that, yeah, it's fucking horrible the way that politics have gotten involved in this country's health. And it's led to a lot of people dying that I don't think that needed to. I think that more people died in the pandemic than was necessary because things like masks and vaccinations were politicized when they shouldn't have been. I think that people are dying right now in the ED waiting room waiting for care because things have been politicized in our healthcare system that shouldn't have been. Were stationary nurses getting paid extra during the COVID outbreak? No. Hospitals were getting paid extra money, but nurses were not. Nurses were dying. Like, legit, nurses were dying. There was a significant number in New York City that died from COVID doing their job. They got it doing their job, and they died doing their job. Their family was not compensated. They did not get extra money. Nothing. Nurses were getting what's called emergency money. So the answer is sort of. So who was bagging all the money? Well, the corporations, the CEOs. You know, remember when I always said hospitals and travel agencies were making record profits? Yeah, they were the ones. It wasn't the nurses. So travel nurses were getting paid extra money, sort of. So because we were considered high risk tenants, we weren't able to get apartments. So we were instead staying at hotels. So sure, nurses were getting paid more money during the pandemic, but they were also paying ridiculous amounts of money in housing costs because they couldn't get an apartment because people were afraid. And you know what? Legit. Like, here's this person who's traveling all around the country being exposed to lots of people. Do you really want to invite them into your home during the middle of a pandemic? I mean, I think that that's fair. So instead, these nurses were staying in hotels, and that's like a ridiculously high cost. And yeah, it's nutty. It's absolutely nutty. But overall, yes, nurses were making crisis pay. Crisis pay happens a lot. Like, it isn't something that was just exclusive to the pandemic. Like, I don't think that people understand that, okay, yes, nurses are paid for housing, but that entire package number, so when we talk about I get paid this amount for the contract, that includes housing, that includes what we call incidentals, that includes everything. That's the whole package. So it includes any travel expenses, the whole thing. They don't look at it per hourly rate and then. They don't break it down that way. They give you that whole lump, and it includes all of those sectionalized rates together. So like I'm currently on a contract that's like, I don't know, I think like not quite 3,000 a week, but that's everything. That's all of my housing, that's my incidentals, that's my food, that's travel, that's everything together, plus my hourly rate. Like, so that rate that people see advertised for travel nursing is not just your paycheck. That's your whole thing. That's all of your stipend money. That's all of your compensation. That's the whole thing. All in one lump that you get as a paycheck. So you don't get like a paycheck and then like this other check to cover those other things. So yes, there were nurses who were doing their job who died during the COVID outbreak, and that was significantly a thing in New York. Yep. And they got no additional benefits. They got no additional support. Their families got no support. They were just left to their own devices to try to figure that shit out. Oh, no, we pay for our own housing with whatever that pay is. So, like, I get this, like, weekly thing, and then I take out of that to pay for it. So, it's like, if you can get a good deal, like, if you can, like, find a great rent, you can make more money versus if you have to stay at a hotel. Is the overtime pay for a nurse good? Depends. And overtime as a nurse comes at a really high cost. Emotionally, physically, it's very demanding. So sometimes it pays well, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it pays time and a half, just like everywhere else. Do I feel like I'm a real warrior? Not really. I don't feel like nurses are doing things that are any more ridiculous than some of the other jobs. Like, I look at people working at McDonald's and I see people screaming profanities at them over how a hamburger was cooked. And that is absolute fucking insanity, and I would never accept it. I would fucking walk out of the room even if you were, like, in pain. Like, if you're verbally abusing me, unless you are fucking going to die, I'm going to walk out of the room because I have the right to not be abused. But people who work at McDonald's are not afforded that right. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me. Like, they are legally not protected. Like, they can lose their job if they say to a customer, no, you can't fucking speak to me like that. Like, what? What? So I think that every job right now in this country is full of 100% all kinds of bullshit. It's insane. Like, why? Why are we doing this? I just blah. Electrocute this cow? Yeah, let's just electrocute this cow. Because I totally got into rant mode and stopped playing. Sorry, guys. Hi! Sorry. Sometimes you like... maybe I should warn anybody who's like new here. Sometimes there's like what I call a hot topic button, and if it gets pushed, I just sort of like start barfing, and yeah, this is definitely one of those topics that I think for like obvious reasons is one that is really near and dear to my heart and really is very frustrating to me. And I think that a lot of people are keeping their heads in the sand. Like, I hear a lot of people saying, like, why doesn't anybody want to work anymore? And I want to fucking just headbutt them or punch them. It's not very often that I want to, like, just resort to violence. But there are times, man. And it's just like, dude, what the heck? Like, it's not that people don't want to work. Like, it's been proven over and over again, like, if you meet people's needs, they just work because people want to feel like they're doing something of value. But when you treat them like shit and you don't meet their needs, like, there's this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you have to meet the needs before they can meet actualization. And actualization is the top of that tier. And that's where we do all the really good shit. That's where we come up with good ideas. That's where we like innovate. That's where we brainstorm. That's where we like really come up with amazing stuff. And that's where companies should want us, which means they should be taking care of us. And oh, fuck no. Surgeons work even worse hours than nurses. Like, it terrifies me that somebody could be cutting into my body who has literally been awake and working for 20 fucking hours straight. But it happens all the fucking time. I mean, I don't know how many times I have seen surgeons who have worked a full 12-hour shift, like that's their scheduled shift, and then because emergency surgeries have come in or urgent cases have come in, they just stay past their shift and do more surgeries. And it's not like 15 minutes, like more surgeries mean hours. So these doctors sometimes will work like 30 hours straight. Sometimes it's 16, sometimes it's 18. It's fucking insane. And these doctors will be on call for like a week straight. So they'll go home and then get called in the middle of the night to answer questions about their patients or other surgeons' patients. So they aren't even allowed to just fucking sleep. It's insane. And then they're the person who's responsible for literally cutting open your body. Like, what are we doing? Like, why do we run it this way? I know I already said this, but I think that you should hear this. My mom is a nurse, and she works really hard and has no time for lunch break and no time to use the bathroom, and she doesn't get paid good at all. Most shifts that I work, I work a 12-hour shift. Most shifts that I work, I do not get to take my lunch. I do not get to take either 15-minute break. I work the entire 12-hour shift without stopping. It's a struggle for me to actually be able to stop long enough to take my medications. So I will literally go 14, 16 hours without peeing, because it isn't ever just a 12-hour shift. The shift is scheduled for 12 hours, but then you always end up staying because shit happens. So you end up staying late. So it usually ends up being a 13, sometimes 14-hour shift. And then you have like time on either side for travel. So oftentimes it can be like 15 hours that I haven't eaten, haven't had anything to drink, haven't even had a chance to go pee. I mean, we're not even treated like humans. Our basic fundamental human needs are not being met, while we are being expected to take care of people who could die while we are taking care of them. Like, it's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Which unit am I in? Right now, I am working on a colorectal urology unit. It's a med-surg unit. Absolutely. Basic needs are a privilege. Many nurses have a very unhealthy eating relationship because we often end up drinking all shift as much as we can while we're doing other things like charting. So many of us, like myself included, will bring insures to work so that we are getting some kind of nutrition and calories that have value while we're working. And then when we go home, we try to consume food. So we basically get into this weird cycle of kind of binge eating where you're eating like a chunk of calories at the end of the day just before you go to sleep. Like, that's not good for anybody, and we all know that. And then they look at nurses and wonder why so many of us have weight issues of either being really overweight or really underweight. Very few nurses have a good weight, and it's because many of us are literally either starving ourselves or are binge eating. And neither is a good option. Like, what are we doing? If I was that guy, I will give up in order to risk someone else's life on a mistake that might happen due to the lack of sleep. Well, the thing is that you could, and some nurses have, and mistakes have happened. And the thing is that in this country, those nurses are also being held accountable on a criminal level, and now nurses are going to jail if they are being made to work ridiculous hours, not allowed to eat, not allowed to sleep, not allowed to drink, all conditions in which induce brain fog, and then they make a mistake because of the working conditions in which they're forced to endure, then they go to jail. While they have to, for the rest of their lives, deal with the reality that they caused someone harm. Someone who has all their lives dreamed of nothing but helping people, who has dedicated their soul to helping people. If you're the kind of person who will clock in for 12 hours and forgo all of your basic needs for the health and welfare of other fucking people, let me tell you, you are the kind of person that it will fucking kill inside your soul to know that you caused someone harm, and you will take it as a personal failing. So not only do they straddle you with that, they'll send you to jail. Yeah, it's great. But there's nothing wrong with our healthcare system or legal system in this country right now. Am I in a busy hospital? Yes. I am working at Albany Medical Center right now, so it is one of the largest hospitals in New York. I hope that you stick with streaming. Well, the plan is that I'm going to stick with streaming. The plan is that I'm actually going to be going streaming full time. So you're going to be seeing me more. Nursing is not fun. It is painful as fuck. And it is really, really hard, brutal work. And because of these really grueling working conditions, I have reached a point where I cannot recommend the field to other people. And it's not because of what nursing is. Like the actual tasks of like wiping someone's ass or giving injections or giving medications or holding somebody's hand while they're dying. Those things are fucking beautiful. And I would do them every day until I died if I could. But the things they expect you to do in the environment that they give you fucking destroy you. They ask you to zip people up in body bags, person after person after person, as if you're stacking cordwood and not be emotionally affected. And give you no support. None. Nurses have seen an insane number of people dying during the pandemic, and we have gotten no support. We're just expected to continue to work as usual. While we have seen people who have died in really pretty awful ways. COVID is not kind to you in death. And we just have to carry all that trauma around while we continue to not have our physical needs met, while we continue to work in these grueling situations, and while we just continue to try to make sure people don't die. It's insane. We were covering her, she still asked me for stuff and asked me for help and got in trouble for someone else. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're just, there's these, it's just so many layers. So many layers of bullshit. And yes, I remember when I was in a TikTok. It kind of exploded and was wild. But I feel like some nurses are passionate about their job. Oh, that one went up. Because I'm ranty, I'm getting behind on But I feel like some nurses are passionate about their job. What makes people want to go into nursing? I can't speak to like what makes people want to go into nursing. I can only tell you what made me want to go into nursing. I want to help people, and I wanted to do things that mattered. I was a real shithead and a real asshole to people when I was young, and I hurt a lot of people. I was a bully. I lashed out around just everybody around me. I was a very broken person, and I took it out on everyone. And I wanted an opportunity to kind of repay the debt. I wanted to be able to heal myself by knowing that there are people who are out there helping other people. I wanted to be the person that I needed when I was 12. And I wanted to be the person who other people needed when they were in crisis, so that there would be somebody there when they were having that moment, that they could then have somebody lift them up and not fall into this cycle of abuse and chaos and violence. And I chose nursing specifically because of the options it gives you. It gives you much more diversity than some of the other fields and much more flexibility. So I chose it partly for redemption. I chose it partly for flexibility of field. You can be OB one day and then you can be in med surg the next day and do pediatrics the next day, all with 1 degree. There's not a lot of fields that let you do that, and that's pretty cool. But I also did it because I feel an inner need for purpose, and I feel an inner need to do things that matter. If I'm going to spend 40 hours a week on something, I want it to be something that has meaning and that is real. I don't want to spend my time on shit that isn't important. And I felt like nursing was something that I could spend 40 hours a week on and walk away from my job and be proud of what I had invested those hours in. So those are the reasons that I chose the field. I don't know what other people have for reasons. During COVID, I got moved to ER. Let me tell you guys, every shift was a nightmare. We at least lost 2 pounds of sweat because all the protection. Long story short, I got into therapy and got diagnosed with burnout and PSD. I'm not going to speak about burnout because I don't think that I can speak about burnout and not be an enraged machine, but I think the word burnout is complete gaslighting bullshit. You are absolutely suffering from PSD because you were not getting support that companies owe you. Like, if we're being asked to do a job, we should be protected while we're doing a job. Like, if you are going to be doing a job that there's risk of blood exposure to my person, there should be a shield of some kind, whether it's a gown or a plastic shield, to protect me from that blood. It is the hospital's job and responsibility to protect me while I do my job. There should not be any difference in that expectation to protect me from the emotional traumas that I am at risk for when I'm doing my job. Like, it is known that when things like outbreaks or big car accidents or really messy restraints or difficult codes happen, that healthcare providers experience trauma. And yet, healthcare facilities are not required to protect their healthcare workers from the trauma of their job because it's in our head. And we didn't take care of ourselves well enough if we have any kind of mental problem. It's our fault. That's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Like, that's no. Like, it doesn't matter how much self-care you do. You can't zip up 6 body bags a night and walk away okay. You can't do it. There's no self-care that makes that okay. Like, that's not a thing. That doesn't exist. There's no self-care, there's no regimen, there's no meditation, and this is my psych nurse telling you. There is no fucking self-care that is going to erase the traumas of having a patient grab you by the face and slam your face down onto the floor. I saw that happen to a nurse. He grabbed her by the ponytail and smashed her face onto the floor 4 times before we could cut her hair out of his hand. She had facial fractures and still to this day has post-concussion syndrome 4 years later. You don't go home and have self-care to make that go away. But that's what's expected of us. She got no mental health care services. None. She had to fight for her health care coverage because that's what our country is right now. I mean, It's absolutely fucking insane. And then they wonder why we can't get enough nurses. Like, we can't lure people into the profession, and why we can't keep people. Because I can't tell you how many nurses quit after they saw that nurse be brutalized. They were like, holy shit, that could happen at this job. I don't want this. I like my face being intact. Not to mention, they were traumatized at having seen it and not having been able to help her. And none of us got any kind of support. None. Not to mention, there was no security there to help us. We just sort of had a piggy pile on this dude, and I was legit trauma shear cutting off her ponytail. Like, that was how that shit went. Yeah. That's our self-care. Woo! It's insane. I mean, and doctors are not in any better situation. Like, I speak specifically about nursing because that's my experience. But let me tell you that it doesn't matter if you're a doctor. It doesn't matter if you're a respiratory therapist. It doesn't matter if you're a CNA. Like, we're all in the shit right now with no support. I mean, respiratory therapists are fucking saints. The shit that they did during the pandemic, I can't even imagine. I saw respiratory therapists putting in airways, life-saving airways, while people were spewing blood up into their faces while they had no PPE because they were not available in the hospital. Like, if that is not the definition of selflessness, I don't know what is. Like, the RTs are the unspoken champions of the pandemic. They are not praised enough. What they have done during the pandemic is absolute fucking insanity. Ugh. Have I ever had a patient that was somewhat normally fine and then died all of a sudden? Yeah. Yeah, I've more than once, yep. I have had a coworker who was fine and then suddenly died on me, and I got to code a fellow nurse. That was fun. I've had a patient who I was talking to. I was doing their discharge paperwork. He stood up, he grabbed his chest, he went down, we coded him, and he did not come back. I had a patient who I was talking to. She was stable. We were looking at discharging her the next day. It was just a placement issue. I went out of the room to get her tea. I came back and she had passed in that time. She was a DNR, so we did not code her. And I had to just notify the family. It was a very uncomfortable conversation. But yeah, people die all of a sudden all the time, and I've definitely experienced that. Won't go deeper on trauma exposure, but yeah, they just sent us feeling sad, too sad, get back to work. That is exactly what it's like. They don't care. And yeah, I feel like American workforce right now is very akin to slavery. I have been talking about the American workforce being like indentured servitude because we are working off a debt and we owe them until we have this debt paid, and we don't have a lot of options until we have this debt paid because we can't fucking live until this debt is paid. Kind of sounds like indentured servitude to me, doesn't it? But, yeah, it's really scary shit out there. And I don't think that people have a lot of concept as to what the hospitals look like now. In the hospital now with my dad, you guys are absolute champs. Thank you, Punch. We appreciate that. I keep justifying myself with, if it's not me, who else going to help and keep going on. I have honestly have been telling myself that for at least a decade now. And I have definitely reached the point in my life that I've hit a wall. And, I was telling you guys that I've been struggling. And the big struggle for me has been that I have reached the point that I'm leaving bedside nursing. And that has been a very difficult decision for me. But I can't do it anymore. I can't leave my shift in absolute physical agony because I have physical needs that are not being met, because I'm not able to take my medication for my dystonia and my muscles are locking up by the end of the shift. I can't emotionally handle anymore the layers of trauma that I have not been given time to process and work through. I mean, as a mental health care professional, I know what trauma work is supposed to look like, and I have literally done none of it. And it's just been kind of piled on for the last 3 years, especially. But even before the pandemic, it's been pretty ugly. So yeah, Mr. Arch and I have had a lot of conversations recently, and I am making the shift, and we are going to do the very absolutely terrifying leap of faith of me going to streaming full time, and we're gonna see how that goes. So we'll see. And it's not going to erase all of the stress, and it's not going to erase all of the pain. I don't have a lot of like delusions that it's just gonna make everything go away. But I can't add on to what's already there anymore. And as far as if not me, then who? At some point, this system is going to fold whether I stay or not, because this is unsustainable. And we have been at an unsustainable position for a very long time. And if it folds, or not even if, when it folds, it's not going to be because I chose to walk away. It's going to be because CEOs chose to take billions of dollars of profit rather than paying to have adequate staffing. It's going to be because we as Americans have allowed healthcare to be dictated by healthcare insurances rather than by doctors. It's going to be because we have allowed there to be unsafe work conditions where nurses do not feel safe physically, emotionally, and spiritually at work, that they literally are leaving work injured. It is going to be because corporatized hospitals and corporatized healthcare has not been held accountable for not taking care of the basic human needs of their workers. And all of that is going to eventually come to a head. And I think that it's going to be coming sooner rather than later, because the ER crisis is so unsustainable. I like the boarding situation in the ER right now. The situation is horrific. People are dying in the waiting rooms, waiting for beds because there aren't any beds, because we have people boarding in the ER. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. My dad had a stroke last week. He is stable, but it's going to be a long recovery. Yeah, I'm really sorry that he had a stroke. I'm glad that he survived his stroke, but it's going to be a long recovery, and it's going to be hard to say, what that recovery is going to look like. Strokes are awful. I'm so sorry that you and your family are going through that, and I hope that you guys can find good supports to help you work through that. Whew, that's a tough thing. Oh my God, you're the super mega hyper duper cooler girl who sang happy birthday to that one guy on his birthday. It's so amazing. Well, thank you, Mool Grok. So One Punch Man, my advice is to try to take things one day at a time and try not to project expectations. Let his brain recover, and then when the neurologist tells you that he's reached his new baseline, then try to acclimate to that new baseline. I think that is one of the most difficult things about a stroke, is acclimating to the new reality of what your normal is and being comfortable and okay with what that is. And honestly, that's oftentimes what the biggest challenge with receiving any chronic illness diagnosis is. You know, you generally take your body for granted. Like, we pretty much think that we're going to have our body forever and that it's going to function the way that it always has forever. And when you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, you are told that that's not the case, and that normal has been taken from you, and that is really hard. There's a grieving process that's going to come with that for you and for him. So give yourself time to grieve. Please find support through that grieving process. Doesn't necessarily need to be professional grief, but know that professional support is available if you need it. Because yeah, that stuff is really, really hard to take in and deal with. And I hope everything goes in all the best possible ways that it can. We will send you all of the like witchy blessings and positive energy your way. Ugh. It's just lots of stuff. And guys, we went from we're going to electrocute cows to we're gonna talk about like the weight of the world. Like, sorry. So we're gonna like water my face hole because I like totally ignored my redeems again. Sorry. But thank you, Smash, for the reminder to drink, especially when I'm ranting. I should drink. Thanks for the advice and encouragement. Glad I popped into this channel for a minute. And then we're doing a wiggle. Thank you, partner Husky. We appreciate the reminder that we should be moving and not being just a lump while we're streaming. They say that why we love gaming and cartoons is that I just realized that we try to escape from our reality because our times is way more difficult than their time. I think that there's some truth in that. I think that video games and cartoons and all of that is absolutely a coping skill that's being used. And I think that it can be, for the most part, a good, healthy coping skill. And posture check. Thank you, Hockey Star. I appreciate all of you guys giving me reminders, even though I got like super hyper focused and word vomited on you and was ignoring my redeems. For a special occasion, it's wiggle time. Yes, wiggle time, wiggle time. And yeah, I figured it was supposed to be pop and not poop. I mean, but if you need to come in here and like dump your shit, it's okay. Like, we'll help you deal with your emotional shit. I mean, I can't really help you with your poop shit, like physical shit. Like, I mean, not that that's outside my purview either, but like, you can't email me your poop, so there's that tangent. Thank you, brain. We're gonna have some coffee now. So yeah, welcome to the ADHD, like, brain to mouth filter. Does not really work when under stress. You guys get that little gem. We could talk about emailing poop. And you get to drink some more electrolytes. Thank you. Oh my goodness, Waffles. I have a cat named Waffles. I have to like really stare at some of these to figure out what they're supposed to be.